Minister, what benefits does the Localism Bill offer businesses?
Oh, lots, because what this is going to do is going to incentivise local authorities to, in terms of building, in terms of development, but it's also going to mean that when you talk to your local council about a local problem, they should be able to deal with it rather than constantly having to be referred up.
And the Conservative, your open source planning white paper offers the possibility of flexible zoning where businesses can effectively take themselves out of the planning process. Do you think this is a positive concept in the bill?
Well, we're moving further on. We're actually going to do a review of user class, which is essentially a review of zoning. And I think in some ways they've become too constricted. Obviously we want to retain the character of an area, but sometimes, businesses is not always negative. It can enhance an area. It can go with the increasing the quality of life and the experience of living in a locality.
Now, the Localism Bill at the moment offers people the chance to set up neighbourhood forums, they can initiate referendums, they can effectively group together as local citizens and have this voice. There's no plans at the moment for businesses to do the same, and I mean there is an intrinsic part of many communities as communities themselves.
We did of course amend the bill to ensure that local businesses could set up a neighbourhood plan, as indeed academic institutions could set up a neighbourhood plan. And the idea behind a neighbourhood plan is once you get buy-in from the local community in terms of where the development goes, what it looks like, its density and the like, after that, no further planning permissions are required.
But we could end up with a juxtaposition with the communities sort of set up its plan, and then if a business is in there and doesn't have a loud enough voice, it effectively gets forced out, and you could sort of end up with zero economic development because the local community has effectively ruled that out because they just want to live there and mow their lawns. They don't want to go to work there. They wanted the business and the nasty stuff to happen in another part of the region or the county or the country.
Or we could be a little bit more chirpy in our general views about life and recognise that business has a big part to play in local communities. It's what makes us go back to neighbours. It's what makes us proud to call a place a home. But also it's very important to kind of understand that the national planning framework, which is reflected at a local level and reflected in the neighbourhood plan, is pro-growth. And we're looking towards ensuring that people have places to work, that they don't have to travel miles to work. And, I'm pro-business, you should be.
I think we're all pro-business. We're all pro-business here at the conference, but the fact is that it's all very well being optimistic, saying local communities should be proud of business, but many of the people watching this that are running small businesses in perhaps not necessarily industrial areas or sort of commercial areas of cities or towns, but are in the suburbs, in small market towns, as soon as they go to try and expand that business, just to add a few square foot onto a shop or a warehouse, the local community just piles in around them and they stop the whole thing dead. And the danger is that business, for all the want of being proud of the businesses in their community, when people aren't working in their communities and they're commuting, the last thing they want is more business on their back door, and this will stifle that.
Well, that's because the present system is predicated on exactly that kind of problem, which is individual applications. And if you put the conflict into individual applications, then that business has to take the weight of the world on its shoulders. What we're doing is making the conflict such as it is in the plan. So once the plan has been worked out where business is going to go, and once we look in terms of exempting certain kind of extensions to businesses, then actually that business won't be at conflict with their neighbour. They'll be looking towards to trade with their neighbour, and their neighbour will be pleased to see them doing well.
So the business needs to get the plan sorted, then you're saying it's plain sailing once that plan's done?
I'm saying that the local authorities have to sort out the plan. Once the local plan is sorted, once the neighbourhood plan is sorted, and most authorities now have a local plan just ready for registering and for approving, then that's going to be a lot easier.
Now, the local enterprise partnerships were sold to the business community as business-led bodies, shaping and defining local areas in partnership with local authorities. Why does the Localism Bill, it fails to mention LEPs, I mean, do you think they're merely going to turn into these glorified talking shops with little or no power?
Well, if the bill had referred to it, we would have to wait to about Christmas time to set local enterprise partnerships up. You don't have to do everything in the bill. What we're doing is running things in parallel to them. And the local enterprise partnerships started in July. We wanted them to be business-led. I said in the room, I just done a speech, you know, business was saying to me this: we're sick of being consulted, we want to have a proper say. So we're not putting a couple of people on a board. Half the board will be business people. We'll have a chairperson that's business-led. And for goodness sake, the British Chamber of Commerce is actually leading the network. Not government, not local government, not a Quango, but the British Chamber of Commerce.
Does it worry you that they haven't been finalised, the plans for the LEPs? And I mean, some parts of the country, they're still somewhat confused, and other parts, they're not. They're firmer, but it's quite there. There's a lot of variation.
About 90% of the country is covered by local enterprise partnerships. We ought to agree some more. But I want to be clear. If you sit around and argue among yourselves and you can't decide to help, well, fair enough. I understand that. But meanwhile, the rest of the country is moving on. Like, for example, in terms of local enterprise zones, we won't even look at an application that doesn't have a LEP, that doesn't have a local enterprise partnership.
And then finally, back to the Localism Bill, there's this prospect, or there's a prospect of discretionary business rates. Some people would be fearful that it's like a sort of a Trojan horse for localising that, as opposed to keeping the sort of uniform system that's currently in place.
Well, that's existed for some time, as you know.
Absolutely.
And it's regularised, and of course, if we can come to an agreement, local businesses come to an agreement with local authority to do something specific for those businesses in a specific area, then I've got no problem whatsoever about, for a temporary period, a local levy being raised. But I'm not having that long term. We're not going to have a position where local authorities can use businesses as a milch cow. I'm not having that. What we were looking for local authorities is to be able to share in economic growth, which means if it's good for you, it's good for the locality, it's good for councils.